Who has a dream in their heart? You know, I think we're all born with a dream. And it can be a different thing for different people, and be expressed in one dream can be expressed in many different ways. But I think, in some ways, I think to be human and to be made in His image is to carry dreams in our hearts. And I just want to, I know Shireen's going to talk more about dreams tomorrow as well, but I want to share just a few things that I've been thinking about dreams. And right from a little girl, even though I didn't know the Lord in those days, but in my heart, I kind of landed on the planet with a dream in my heart. And that's kind of how I think of it. It's just kind of, I just arrived here like that, with this dream in my heart. But when I became a Christian, it actually kind of began to put words to it. I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to read out the passages that I felt like the Lord gave to me that really put words to the dream that I had, that I was born with. It's in Isaiah 58, and starting at verse 5. Is this not the kind of fast that I have chosen, for a man to humble himself? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying on sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast? Is that what you call an acceptable day to the Lord? Is this not the kind of fast that I have chosen? And this is it, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe him and not to turn away from your own flesh. Then your light will break like the dawn and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. You know, sometimes you see a plaque on the wall and it says, the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. But it's because of all that goes before that. And you will call and the Lord will answer your cry for help, and He will say, here I am. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing of the finger and the malicious talk, if you spend yourself in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will break forth in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always, and He will satisfy your needs in the scorched land, and He will strengthen your fame. You'll be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and raise up foundations, the age-old foundations, and you will be called the repairer of the broken walls and restorer of streets with dwellings. I'll stop there because it goes on, but those words make my heart sing. I just think this is a God that I really love. When I first read that, I was so thankful to have found God that has this heart. And I realize now, obviously, that He'd put this desire in me when as I say, when I landed on the planet, when I arrived here, I came with that part of His heart. It was already in me, even though I wasn't a Christian. And so that has been the dream in my heart. Again, over in Isaiah 61, it kind of says again similar things, where Jesus said, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me because He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted and to proclaim freedom for the captives, and to release from darkness the prisoners, and to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord and the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn in Zion, to bestow upon them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of despair, that they will be called the oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor. I think I was born with a desire to see the world comforted. When I used to read the word comfort and compassion, even as a baby Christian, the first time I was reading those words, for some reason or other, tears would just come down my face. I would just read the word compassion. Jesus was moved with compassion, and somehow that would make me teary. Or I'd read the word comfort. It says here, to comfort all who mourn. And I would read that. I'd read, to comfort all who mourn. And there's something in me, even though I didn't really understand what that meant, but there was something in me that just, my heart just went, oh, there's something about that. Again in Isaiah 40 when it says, comfort, oh comfort my people. And I think when I read that, somehow I knew the people need to be comforted. And the people need to be released into freedom, as it says here in Isaiah 58, where it talks about, he's seeing the naked to cover him. And the naked is not just people who have no clothes. The naked is also the people who have come through a time of shaming. We always say that love covers, and when we're not loved, and when we're not experiencing love and knowing the love, we are naked. We are just stripped bare, and we're naked. But God says here, when we see the naked, to cover him, to cover with love, not just. Obviously, in reality, it's giving clothes if someone physically hasn't got any clothes. But it's a bigger word. And when I was reading that, I just thought, I have a dream. That speech of Martin Luther King's, I've copied it. I've not only copied it out, but I've also downloaded it, and I listen to it on my iPod every now and then. Because the way he expressed that, I have a dream today. And it's like, there's something in us, I think, that stirs up that we are born with a dream. And there's things that can happen to us that maybe sometimes that dream's not called to life, or we can't really articulate it, we can't really say exactly what it is. But there's something in our hearts, there's things that we see, that we hear, that just make our hearts sing. And I think that's something, when that happens, I think there's something of your dream that you're seeing. People have different dreams for different things that they want to see or they want to be, but it's not always articulated. But one of the things that I found really fascinating as I've looked through the scriptures is the people who had a dream. And, we can look at, obviously Joseph was a man who had a dream. There's a lot about dreams in the Bible. In fact, I think someone worked it out once that if it's speaking about dreams and prophecy, I think 1/3 of the Bible is taken up with dreams and prophecy. So there's something, dreams come from our hearts. We can have a good idea and set about to do that. But actually a dream is something that comes from our heart, and we don't fully know what it looks like. We don't fully know how that's going to work or how it's going to be, but there's something in us that knows my fulfillment will be in that. Often, we can feel unfulfilled. It's because we are not living out of the dream that God has put in our heart. And because we're made in His image, I believe we're born with some of God's dreams. For each of us, it may be a different thing because God is so infinite. But He has a dream. And often my prayer, as I'm praying to Him, I often say, Father, would you make me the woman who you dreamt of before time began? Because we were born out of a dream. He had a dream about you. Before you were even created, before the earth was made, He was dreaming of you. It says in a couple of different places, if we could count the thoughts that He had towards us, and they're all good, it would number more than the grains of the sand. He has a dream for you, and He has a dream for me. And but the people that have kind of captured me have been the women, because in the scriptures, because one of the things that really describes dreams and the whole process of dreaming really is, a lot of it is tied up with birth, conception, gestation and birth. And we see women, we look at Sarah, for example, Sarah who gave birth to Isaac, but she was barren. And I think one of the prerequisites for a dream from God is first to be barren. I always say I'm an ideas man. I have a million ideas. You give me a subject or a problem or a thought, and I can just go off on 10 different ideas or solutions in a minute. Just ideas come to me. But that doesn't help when it's not always helpful when it comes to dreaming. We can have ideas of what we could do or what we could be. But having a dream that comes from God is different. And I believe one of the prerequisites is that we are barren first. I look at Sarah, and I see, he was a woman who brought forth one of the most significant men in Scripture, in the history of the world even. And his mother was barren. For 99 years or 90 years or whatever it was, she was barren. And yet, when the time was right, God opened her womb and she gave birth to this child who was to become one of the most significant men of all times. And you see, there's something spiritual, there's something godly about dreams and the dream that God gives us, that we cannot bring it to birth. We cannot even conceive before time. And sometimes I think, we're waiting and nothing's happening. We've got this idea or this thought, this thing in our heart that we want to do, but if we're barren, if we're unable to physically do it ourselves, it can be very frustrating. And a lot of times it's not happening, so you try and make it yourself. That's exactly what happened with Abraham and Sarah, wasn't it? It wasn't happening. They'd had the promise they were going to have a son. So finally Sarah has a bright idea. And I identify with Sarah. I would have done exactly the same probably. Have a bright idea. Okay, it's not going to work like this, so we can make it work like that. And so I just kind of manipulate it to a way that wasn't